Hello, seventh grade. I'm also providing an audio version of the assignment for today and Monday. I'm going to read it for you guys in case that's what you need or that's what you want. So you got about 2.5 pages of reading, and then there are 27 questions you need to complete in complete sentences, and that'll be your assignment for 2 class periods. Not that bad of a deal. All right, so I'll read the document here, and then I will read the questions, and that'll be everything for you guys. And you still please answer this in writing in the assignment on Google Classroom. So, the nation's leaders also face the task of building an executive branch to help the president govern. Congress created 3 executive departments: the Department of State to deal with foreign affairs, the Department of War to handle military matters, and the Department of the Treasury to manage finances. To head these departments, Washington chose capable leaders: Thomas Jefferson as Secretary of State, Alexander Hamilton as Secretary of the Treasury, Henry Knox as Secretary of War. These department heads soon became the president's chief advisors, or cabinet. All right, next heading: Hamilton and Jefferson, 2 conflicting visions. Hamilton and Jefferson held very different political ideas. Hamilton believed in a strong central government led by a prosperous, educated elite of upper-class citizens. Jefferson distrusted a strong central government and the rich. He favored a strong state and local governments rooted in popular participation. Hamilton believed that commerce and industry were the keys to a strong nation. Jefferson favored a society of farmer citizens. All right, just to illustrate those differences. So Hamilton's going to believe in a stronger government, Jefferson in a weaker federal government, stronger state governments. Jefferson's more of a farmer, Hamilton's more of a city guy, more of a banker type. All right, Hamilton's economic plan. As Secretary of the Treasury, Hamilton's job was to put forth the nation's economic plan on a firm footing. To do this, he called on the nation to pay off its debts, a large amount of which was incurred during the Revolution. So that just means we owed a lot of people a lot of money because of the money we spent during the American Revolution. We had a lot of debts. He also proposed the establishment of a national bank that would be funded by both the federal government and wealthy private investors. This bank would issue paper money and handle taxes and other government funds. So before Hamilton, we didn't have a national dollar bill. There were no dollar bills. In fact, we're still just trying to get coins down at a federal level. So this is very early on. Opponents of the national bank, such as James Madison, argued that since the Constitution made no provision for such an institution, Congress had no right to authorize it. All right, so this is just like the strict interpretation, loose interpretation that we talked about before you guys went into quarantine here. So James Madison said, there's nothing about this bank in the Constitution, so we shouldn't do it. And Hamilton's saying, well, there's nothing in there that says we can't do it. So that's the back and forth. Like Hamilton, who favored a loose interpretation of the Constitution, and like those like Madison, who favored a strict interpretation. A vital debate has continued throughout U.S. history. So what they're just basically saying is, to this day, you have people going, well, maybe the government should grow, and then other people saying, well, maybe it shouldn't, and they both go to the Constitution to justify those positions. All right, the first political parties. The differences within Washington's cabinet intensified and soon helped to give rise to a 2-party system. That just means there are 2 different major parties. Like today, we have Democrats and Republicans. Back then, they had Democratic Republicans and Federalists. So, 2 parties, that's what that means. Those who shared Hamilton's vision for a strong central government, mostly Northerners, like us, called themselves Federalists. Those who supported Jefferson's vision of a strong state government, mostly Southerners, called themselves Democratic Republicans. And actually, New York, we were kind of in the middle of that debate for a while. All right, the Whiskey Rebellion. We talked about this before quarantine, so hopefully this is familiar to you guys. During Washington's second term, an incident occurred that reflected the tension between the federal and regional interests. Previously, Congress had passed a protective tariff, an import tax on goods produced abroad, meant to encourage American production. To generate even more revenue, Secretary Hamilton pushed through an excess tax, a tax on a product's manufacture, sale, or distribution, to be levied on manufactured whiskey. All right, there's a whole mouthful here. Basically, what's happening is that Hamilton, as Washington's secretary, passed a tax, so money you have to pay to the government, on people who are making whiskey. They basically have to pay 2 or 3 cents a gallon on every gallon of whiskey they make. That's all that means. And of course, the people making the whiskey did not like this. So, in 1794, furious whiskey producers in western Pennsylvania refused to pay the tax and attacked the tax collectors. The federal government responded by sending some 13,000 militiamen to end the conflict. The Whiskey Rebellion, as it became known, marked the first use of armed force to assert federal authority. So this proved that the new government, the Constitution, not the Articles of Confederation, that George Washington as president, was effective because he just put it down right away. It wasn't like Shays' Rebellion where, everything just kind of fell apart. All right, Marbury versus Madison. This is going to be one of our first court cases. If you guys remember in class, we looked at court cases that affect you guys. Tinker versus Des Moines, and a lot of other cases involving students, cell phone rights, privacy, First Amendment speeches, TLO versus New Jersey. So Marbury versus Madison. This is a court case, so let's pay attention to this. Just before leaving office, President Adams had tried to influence the future judicial decisions by filing federal judgeships with Federalists. Mouthful. Basically, Adams didn't win his re-election, but before he left, he was like, okay, I'm gonna appoint a whole bunch of people to be judges. I'm gonna send out letters, and then they'll get them while I'm gone, and they'll be judges of my picking, even though we have a different president. But the signed documents authorized some of the appointments that had not been delivered by the time Adams left office, so the mail didn't get there in time. Jefferson, the next president, argued that these appointments were invalid and ordered Madison, his Secretary of State, not to deliver them. Basically, he said, I'm the president now, I get to pick who's in charge. This is going to cause a court case. This argument led to one of the most important Supreme Court decisions of all time. In Marbury versus Madison, 1803, the Federalist Chief Justice John Marshall declared that part of Congress's Judiciary Act of 1789, which would have forced Madison to hand over the papers, was unconstitutional. Big mouthful there. Basically, the outcome of the case was the Supreme Court said the Supreme Court is not going to force this guy to deliver these letters. We have a new president now. That president will be making the decisions. So the decisions strengthened the Supreme Court by establishing the principle of judicial review, the ability of the Supreme Court to declare a law, in this case, an act of Congress, unconstitutional. So to summarize that part. So because of Marbury versus Madison, that's when the Supreme Court stood up and said, you know what? We have the power now that if you pass a law and it's in conflict with the Constitution, we can get rid of that law. Now, we did this in class when we wrote our own laws, and we pretended to be the Supreme Court and Congress and the president. So basically, because of this court case, it established the precedent that we can, as a Supreme Court, we can get rid of laws that are against our Constitution. So I know that was a mouthful, and I'm here for help. I do the online stuff. You can shoot me an email. We can't do Zoom anymore, but we can do Google Hangouts, and you have this audio version. So we have 27 questions. And I'm just going to quickly read the questions in case you need to hear them verbally spoken to you. So, questions. What did Congress create to help the president govern? All right. So these pretty much go in order. So you'll see that. So what did he create? It's going to be that collection of people he puts together, and he calls it something, starts with a C. That's all I'm going to give you. All right. Who did Washington appoint as Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of War? That's an easy one. What is the president's cabinet? So how would you define that in your own words? What did Hamilton believe about government? So what were his views in general? And I think I kind of spelled that one out for you. How did Jefferson's views regarding government differ from Hamilton's views? There's a whole section on that. What did Jefferson favor? So what was he like? What did he like to do? Who were his people? That kind of stuff. Don't overthink that one. What did Hamilton believe were the keys to becoming a strong nation? I think that one would be easy. What kind of society did Jefferson favor? So what kind of setup? Where should you live? What kind of stuff you should do for a living? That's a harder question. I'm going to give you guys a break on that one. If you can't flesh that one out, that's fine. One sentence is fine. What did Hamilton believe the nation's economy needed in order to be on a firm footing? So that was that whole thing we talked about. Can I make this? Well, it doesn't say I can't make it. You'll know what that is. 10. What did Hamilton propose and how would it be funded? Okay, that's an easy one too. 11. What would the National Bank do? So the 11 kind of gives away what the other two questions were about, All right, 12. What did James Madison, an opponent of the National Bank, argue about the National Bank? So James Madison doesn't like it, and he's saying, I don't like it because of this. We talked about that. What did Hamilton favor regarding the U.S. Constitution? And then 14, what did Madison favor regarding the U.S. Constitution? So again, that's how they look at the Constitution. Some of these questions are a bit redundant. So if you feel like you're answering the same question twice, they're very similar. You're on the right track. You're doing great. 15, why did the two-party system develop? So why did we end up with two parties? Why not everyone just gets along? I think you can answer that. It's just a general life question. Why don't people get along? 16. What did Federalists favor? We've talked about Federalists, especially when we're talking about Federalists and Anti-Federalists. So did the Federalists favor a strong federal government or a strong state government? That's kind of what that question is asking. Here's the opposite question. 17. What did the Democratic Republicans favor? Same question. No, let's think about this. Were they a fan of the federal government or state governments, or lesser power to the federal government? All right, 18. What is a tariff and what is the purpose of a tariff? Kind of answered that, all right? So, and if you're still listening to this, I'm probably just going to give you this one. So a tariff is like a tax on a foreign nation, or the people selling stuff from a foreign nation. So we're going to buy boots from England. Well, there's going to be a tariff when they get to our shores. They're going to have to pay a little extra just to get to our markets. This way, American boot makers are able to sell a little cheaper than the British one, and we have that advantage. What is an excess tax? They bring that up right into the reading. Why did Secretary Hamilton push through an excess tax on whiskey? Why did he want to collect a tax on whiskey or on anything? Why did he want to raise money is basically what he's saying. 21. What did whiskey producers in Western Pennsylvania do in 1794? So the rebellion, hint, hint. 22. How did the federal government respond to the furious whiskey producers? 23. What did the Whiskey Rebellion mark for the first time in American history? 24. How did President Adams try to influence future judicial decisions? So what did Adams do to try to get his guys on the court? Okay, this is going to be Marbury versus Madison. What did Jefferson argue about Adams' appointments? So when Jefferson became president, what did he say about all those people he sent those letters to? 26. What did Chief Justice John Marshall declare in the Supreme Court ruling in Marbury versus Madison? Okay, so what was the decision? Who was right? And then what is judicial review? Now I'm going to scroll up for a second because I don't know if that's completely outlined here. Okay, judicial review, we went through our notes before quarantine. And they don't... Oh, it's in the very last paragraph here. So you'll be able to get that one. That one's easy. All right, guys, if you need any more help than this, I'm around. You know it. So you have until Monday to get this done. It's a lot easier than it looks. So don't get scared by it. All right, good luck, guys. Hope you're all doing good.